Hey folks, I was recently looking at a guitar on eBay and everything checked out, and I was about ready to pull the trigger on buying it. It was well priced, and I noticed in the fine print right before doing so that the guitar had a top crack right here going from the bridge to the end. And so I thought I would talk about damaged guitars today. The first point I want to make is that I see a lot of sellers on eBay, particularly, not so much Reverb, because I think eBay is more your project and damaged market. I see a lot of sellers that are selling guitars with top cracks, particularly sometimes neck or heel cracks as well, perilously close to full price. I've seen a lot of Recording Kings. There's a seller on eBay that sells Recording Kings with damage needing repair, and he does list the damage on there, but the price is only $20, $30 less than buying one new, which is a bit staggering, really. And so I really think that there's nothing wrong with buying a guitar with a top crack if you intend to fix it. And of course, there are many tutorials on YouTube about sealing the crack and cleating it from the inside, doing it yourself, which you certainly can attempt to do, or taking it to a luthier who is qualified to do that kind of work, and it won't be cheap. So if you have intent on fixing up the guitar yourself or having it fixed for you, you can make great players out of guitars that have top cracks, providing that they can be resealed in a level fashion. They're not stepped, where one side of the crack is depressed and the other side is raised, and you're going to have a hard time closing that crack. Sometimes the guitar can be humidified, sealed off, and the crack will close itself, and then you just cleat it, which is just a clamp and cleating at cross grain, putting a cleat in at a cross grain to hold that closed. And you can make good players out of them, but I will say that the value is going to drop. If you have a guitar, any guitar, whether it's a high-end, mid-range, or even a beginner guitar, and it has a crack in the guitar, even if it's a repaired crack, that guitar is now no longer anywhere near worth the new price. And I see a lot of sellers still trying to get, the going rate out of guitar that's cracked, and I think that's slightly unreasonable. For instance, this guitar here, I showed you this before, has had a repaired neck heel crack right here. I didn't do that repair. I have no idea if that was doweled or what kind of glue was used, if it will hold, how long it will hold. So this guitar now has to be cheap, even though it's a collectible Japanese guitar. I can't command what this guitar would go for without that damage. It's just not honest, particularly since I didn't do the repair. Now when I do a heel repair right there, I will use, on a cheaper guitar, I will use probably something like a Gorilla Glue and a small dowel to hold it in place, and that thing is never going to come apart again. It's actually stronger than the actual wood. The joint will never break at that point again. But a lot of people use white glue or even hide glue to repair these, and they don't. They just line them up and glue them, and you don't know how much pressure it can take or how long it's going to last. So anything with a heel crack here, or a scarf joint crack here that's being glued, or even some kind of headstock reglue, even though it might be holding and the repair looks like it was done by a reputable luthier, the value is no longer the same on anything. So feel free to buy those guitars as players or as fixer-uppers or as projects. But don't pay anywhere near the same rate that you would for a non-damaged version of that guitar. Something like this, collectible vintage Japanese clean, might go anywhere from say $200 to $300. But since it's got that repair there and it's got some other issues, some heavy wear, it's slightly, I don't know if you can see it, but it's slightly bellying. about right here. Not to where it doesn't play, but it's now no longer worth that $200 to $300. I have to cut that in half. And a lot of sellers realize this, and a lot of sellers don't. And a lot of buyers realize this, and a lot of buyers don't. Now, most buyers are smart. They see a crack and they run. Even if I tell them, you know, I repair this, it's got 3 cleats running down at cross grain, it's not coming apart. Doesn't matter. That guitar has damage, and they want a clean guitar. That's most of your customers. Every once in a while, I'll get one that's, oh, it's got personality, and you know, I trust that you repaired it right, and I'm willing to pay this much for it. And you know, and they get a good playing guitar with a repair on it. You know, and I will accommodate offers, because you just can't get the going rate for a guitar once it's got a nasty scar on it. So I just thought I'd do a video about that. I can always tell people that are experienced in buying guitars, because the first thing they do when they come over to look at guitar is they look it over for cracks, they turn it over, they look at the back for cracks, delaminations, separations, then they look at the heel, make sure that that's tight, no cracks at the heel where the heel meets the neck. Sometimes there's a joint there, sometimes there's not, sometimes there's 2 joints there. And then here where the volute sometimes is, or where a scarf joint might be, they look at that, then they look at the headstock to see there's no cracks between the tuners, any drilled holes or anything like that. Then they'll sight the neck and see if it's straight or warped or backbowed or anything like that, or if there's any weird kinks or bumps, particularly around the 12th fret. And you'll say to yourself, yeah, they've bought guitars before, they've sort of learned what to look for. You know, no one's going to fool them. But there are other people, of course, that are new to this, or perhaps are a bit riskier in their buying. And you know, I always try to educate them about what to look for. With guitars, the information is readily available, and I find that people are wary about buying guitars. When it comes to things like violins, cellos, I think the education or the knowledge is not as high with your buying populace. They tend to not know what to look for, and I always use the opportunity to try and educate people or give them some tips about buying stringed instruments that maybe they're not familiar with, particularly parents who are buying their kid one for school or something like that. But anyway, just be aware that damage to guitars, no matter how well they're fixed, they're not worth exactly the same or the equivalent to a non-damaged guitar, even if it's repaired well, even if it's stable. A seller has to knock off or account for that damage, particularly if it's an ugly scar on the guitar. It doesn't mean the guitar has no value. I've seen 16th century violins that are still worth thousands and thousands of dollars with repaired top cracks. But they would be worth a lot more if they didn't have those top cracks and repairs. That's just the nature of the business. So I just thought I'd do a quick video on damaged guitars, what to look for, how it detracts from value, you know, and how sellers and buyers should be reasonable about guitar condition and repairs that need to be done or have been done on a particular guitar. I've just noticed that this guitar here it has a crack between the bridge pins. It's not an issue right now, but it will be down the line. So I have to account for that. Either I fix it or I account for it in my pricing. So just look over guitars well. You know, don't be afraid to walk away from a deal. Don't be afraid to point out things and say, you know, I really think you should account for this defect or this repair on the guitar. You know, do your research. You know, Reverb's a good price point. What are they selling for on there? If it's something selling new or regularly for a certain price, then you should be able to get a damaged or repaired one for less than that amount. This is probably common sense to most of you, but I think there's enough evidence to me anyway that there are a few people that need this information. All right, see you next time.